Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the session panel 18.1 on current activities and future directions of Campbell South Asia. Dr. Horton White is the chair for this session, but he's currently facing some technical issues, so we are starting and he will join in between. So in this panel, we will have three presentations. I would be presenting very briefly upon the current activities and future directions of Campbell South Asia, taking you through some of the key achievements that we have done over the years, and also some of the challenges that we have to work on for the future. And then I have my team here, Dr. Sabina, who would be presenting her work on utility, and she's here waving, on utility of evidence and gap maps and crowdsourcing for giving an example of a specific evidence and gap map on homelessness. Then we have Ashwani Varma, who would be presenting some of the key findings on access to justice map. And all of us have 15 minutes to present, and we will be taking questions towards the end. If you have any questions on any specific presentations, please start putting them either in the Q&A or the chat, and we will try and take it in between the presentations. And as well as towards the end, we will take questions and answers. With that, I'm going to be taking the privilege, and I'm going to be starting my presentation first. Give me a moment while I share my screen. And I'm facing some technical issues with it. Sorry, give me a moment.
Hello. Yes, Ashrita. Any problem?
Yeah, actually, I cannot find the option to share my.
Just next to the setting button, you will see a smaller screen. There is a red cross. Yeah, this is the right one.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so hello everyone. So in this short presentation for 15 minutes, I will be taking you some of the current activities at Campbell South Asia, and of course some of the key challenges that we have for ourselves, in terms of future that we aim to address. So before I begin, this is what I would be covering very briefly, some of the history, how we started as Campbell South Asia, some of the current activities, specifically talking towards the Campbell strategic goal that we have for Campbell South Asia, and some of the future direction, and also how you can engage with Campbell South Asia. So Campbell South Asia, we basically started off as a Campbell Secretariat way back in 2016, which was hosted by Global Development Network at New Delhi, India. And since its inception at 2016, we had two evidence synthesis specialists who started working on specific areas of methods development for Campbell. I was leading an approach paper on evidence and gap map, and my colleague was leading on economic methods. With that, we also started working on a number of evidence and gap maps, starting from mega map on child well-being to violence against children to disability, and a number of reviews coming out of it. We'll see towards the end of the presentation some of the key outputs that we have come across through these evidence outputs. With that, we were also working tremendously with the researchers in LMICs, specifically in South Asian region, to host a number of evidence-related workshops on introduction to systematic reviews and some of the use of evidence kind of workshop. Overall, from 2016 till 2019, we were a part of more than 80 such workshops, training a number of researchers and decision makers across this region. Also, we were involved in producing something called as use of evidence kind of workshop, trying to engage with the government agencies across India and South Asian region. We were the first. We co-hosted the first ever national symposium here in India on social sciences and medicine way back in 2017. So with all of that working from 2016 onwards, in 2019, it was decided for Campbell South Asia to be registered in India as a foundation and as a national and regional center for Campbell collaboration, again hosted by Global Development Network in New Delhi, India. So currently our legal status is that we have two legal entities as the Campbell South Asia section of Campbell Secretariat and as the Campbell South Asia Foundation, which we aim to become an independent body by 2022. So at Campbell South Asia, we have a dedicated and enthusiastic team of researchers and support staff. Some of the happy faces you can see on the screen. And Dr. Horton White is currently the advisor for Campbell South Asia. At Campbell South Asia, we're working towards the 4 pillars of Campbell South Asia strategy. The first one is production of more maps and reviews, of course, building capacity to produce reviews, supporting the use of evidence in South Asian region as well as LMICs, and building a sustainable institution. In my subsequent slides, I will talk a little bit about these strategies. So if we say the production of more maps and reviews, so at Campbell South Asia, we have been working with the number of researchers locally, as well as in the South Asian region to produce more maps and reviews. And if you look at the numbers, prior to 2017, there were virtually no Campbell reviews by LMIC authors in the Campbell Wiley journal. But as of now, we have around 10 completed protocols and 10 completed reviews and maps in the Campbell library. Importantly, with 2 of these published papers were also the most cited papers for 2018 and 2020 as per the Wiley cross-reference citation tracking. Now, if we go by the strategic indicators and the numbers, we were able to achieve our targets for 2019, 2020, and 2021 for the protocols being published in the Campbell Wiley Journal, with the numbers 6 and 10 for 2020 and 2021 respectively. If we talk about the reports, we were able to again meet our targets for 2019 and 2020. For 2021, the target is 8 currently, and we have achieved 4 so far. That includes 2 being published and 2 currently in production. There are few reports, approximately, if we talk about the numbers, there are 3 reports which are currently under the peer review production processes. Also, we try and produce more reviews and maps using Campbell's strategy on identifying the key evidence gaps from the previous map of maps or previous evidence and gap maps and working towards the areas to develop more evidence synthesis in those areas. One such examples would be the disability evidence and gap map. So for this particular map, we started off with map of map, which was funded by CEDL, which identified 3 strategic areas on disability, transport, and access to justice. Transport was recently presented in panel 12.1. Access to justice will be presented today by Ashwani in this session. As a result of this particular EGMs, from the disability EGM, we were able to identify gaps in evidence area in 4 strategic areas, and we have 4 currently ongoing systematic reviews coming from these. Campbell South Asia has also been involved in the innovations in a different mapping process. We have used machine learning for assisting searching and screening for Campbell maps. We have used it for disability and homelessness update, which has significantly affected the overall time and the resources being invested while you're doing screening and searches. We have also used crowdsourcing for screening. Sabina would be presenting this in this session in detail. Co-production of evidence and gap map, which basically helps incorporate the decision-making needs into the evidence and gap map framework itself. Ashwani presented about this in panel 12.1, the recordings of which might be available on the main website now. We have also worked on the country EGMs. One such example is the India country EGMs currently under production. The second strategic component that we have worked so far is on building capacity to produce reviews and maps. So Campbell South Asia has worked on Campbell's strategy, having a 3-stage process for these systematic review workshops, starting from introduction to systematic reviews and mapping, then coming to the protocol workshop, and thirdly, report writing workshop. And if we look at the numbers, since 2019, we have reached out to 450 participants from such workshops. And these are some of the recent and the key workshop that we have worked on. The most recent being the systematic review workshop, which was held jointly for BRAC Institute Bangladesh and Lanzhou University, China. Also, in terms of, if we talk about the strategic indicators and numbers so far in terms of producing reviews, so the number of researchers that have been trained in these workshops and who also have the ongoing Campbell maps and reviews, The numbers have been 20 each for 2019 and 2020, and for 2021 it has been 4 so far. The target is to reach till 15. And the number of webinars where we have presented the Campbell relevant material and have reached out the number of key researchers has been 3 each for 2019 and 2020, and it has been 6 for 2021 so far. The target is set for 20. Now, at Campbell South Asia and Campbell, it is not just to produce the evidence that is important, it is also to have these evidence being used by researchers and decision makers. So we do this by a number of ways, one of which is to have, reaching out to the different stakeholders through the number of events that we host. That could be national level events, or that could be regional or LMIC related events. If we look at these strategic indicators for these numbers, for 2019, it has been 389. It dipped a little in 2020 owing to the pandemic. But again, we have increased it to 397, the target being 500 stakeholders being reached by 2021. And we are positive that we would be able to reach it by the end of the year. If you look at the number of partnerships and collaborations, a number of Campbell reviews and maps for which the Campbell South Asia staff is working, for 2019, it was 5. It was increased to 6 in 2020. And 2021, so far, we have reached out to 8 partnerships and collaborations. To name a few from India, it is gender platforms from Consultative Group of Agriculture. We have IAV, USAID, and we have other partners from India and South Asian region, like BRAC Institute, Bangladesh, working together on maps and reviews. The target is 10 for 2021, and we are positive that we will be able to reach it. We also try and support the use of evidence by disseminating the research across social media. And we have been doing it through Twitter and Facebook. You can see the numbers increasing in terms of followers and in terms of engagements as well through these Twitter and Facebook posts. We also use something called as a demand-driven approach to support the use of evidence, trying to reach out to stakeholders who are also using the evidence. One such example is the Mega Map on Child Wellbeing, which was funded by UNICEF and Ochenti. The whole idea was, as soon as this map was published, they identified areas of key evident gaps, which was in the area of child protection. As a result of it, UNICEF went ahead and funded Violence Against Children map. And now this map is now being actively distributed across the End Violence initiative by UNICEF, where Campbell is also supporting it in a number of ways. And lastly, we have building a sustainable organization. Now, whenever we talk about building a sustainable organization, it has 2 components to it. One of the main components is to have resources so that we can have more evidence and gap maps being funded and being published across. And we also require a strong Campbell South Asia board, at Campbell South Asia, the main aim is to diversify this Campbell South Asia board, both in terms of geography and both in terms of the number of stakeholders involved in this area. And currently at Campbell South Asia, this Campbell South Asia board is across the geography. So we have board members from India, Bangladesh, and Nepal currently involved in here. The second is to have more reviews and map funding, of course, to have a sustainable organization. And currently we have a number of partners and funders who have funded the ongoing Campbell evidence and gap maps, some of which are published already, some of which they are currently under production. And also to have proactive dissemination. And like I mentioned in my previous slide, one of the key strategies that we apply here is to work with stakeholders who are also the users of evidence. And one such example has come up from the Violence Against Children map, where they actually funded a map to identify their own strategic areas, and then now they're disseminating those information across the End Violence initiative to identify more strategic areas for evidence synthesis or for further research. That comes me to the future of Campbell South Asia. So currently we are expanding the Campbell South Asia team. We are looking for directors of research in general for Campbell South Asia. Also, one of the key strategic area for Campbell South Asia is to engage with policy, like to advocate the use of evidence, not just to generate evidence, which is never used. So currently at CSA, we are working towards engaging and identifying opportunities for policy engagement, mainly through national level government events, and also trying to work with our partners in Bangladesh and Nepal to have a joint event across South Asian national level government events as well. And thirdly, engaging with end users and partner organizations to establish and run a program of national training events to be delivered regionally, mainly for capacity building of local researchers so that they can go ahead and deliver and work on systematic reviews and evidence in gap map. And we have more LMIC authors. In terms of how you can engage with Campbell South Asia, you can become a host for Campbell trainings. As I mentioned, we do regular Campbell systematic review events across South Asian and national events. So you can become the host institution for those Campbell trainings. You can attend Campbell South Asia's workshops and events. Of course, once you're trained in Campbell reviews, you can become review authors for both systematic reviews and evidence and gap maps. And we also have a roster for consultants and interns for new and upcoming projects that we have at Campbell South Asia. You can definitely join it by subscribing to our newsletter and also visiting our websites. We very actively promote this on news and events page, which you can see here on the screen. So with that, I will end this presentation, and I thank you for listening to me. And I hope if you have more questions for Campbell South Asia, or if you have any suggestion for us, feel free to put it in the chat, or we can also take the questions and your suggestion towards the end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ashrita. I'm ready to resume my role as chair now. I'm getting an echo. I'm not sure why that is. Is it still there? No. Okay. So apologies to everyone that I was late, some domestic issue, and I had problems logging in with Hopin. So many people have been complaining to us about Hopin, and I can only say, you want to complain? We really want to complain. so we spend a lot of money on this platform, and it's turning out not to be the optimal choice, I would say. The difficulties you have in joining sessions and presenting, I can't get my camera to work now, are proving quite irritating, but do not offset the high quality of the presentations we've been receiving. So welcome to the second week of What Was Global Summit, Evidence for Development. My father always used to say that Monday is the best day of the week because we have an opportunity to make a new week, a fresh start. So for us working in evidence, it's a new chance to make a difference. And I'm very pleased to have heard I was here to hear Ashrita's presentation in full, and you've heard the remarkable work that Campbell South Asia is doing and what's been achieved in a short space of time in setting up a sustainable organization producing high quality evidence synthesis that's relevant around the world and growing engagement across South Asia with a large number of trainings and various forms of policy engagement. As Ashrita said, do put any questions in the chat. There's one of the dysfunctional features of Hopin is it has both a chat and a Q&A, and people don't know which to use. Most people use the chat. That's just fine. Put it in the Q&A, we'll try and see it, but we normally just see the chat. So just go ahead with putting in your questions and comments. Applause, saying how great it all is most welcome. So next we have Sabina Singh from Evidence Synthesis Specialist at Campbell South Asia, who's going to be talking about the work we've been doing on mapping homelessness. Sabina.
Thank you, Dr. White. Are the slides visible now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending upon the time of the day from where you joined us. So today I'll be talking about the utility of evidence in gap maps and how there's a scope for innovation in consecutive updates, taking the example of a map we've been doing for 4 years for the last 4 years at Campbell South Asia on the studies of effectiveness of interventions for people experiencing or at the risk of homelessness. So Currently, we are working on the fourth update of this map, and I'll spend some time explaining the what, why, and how questions involved in the process, like in the various updates, I mean, and how that is kind of useful for an EGM. And then this presentation is actually largely about the methodology followed in the map, and particularly at the search and screening stages. As Ashrita mentioned, I will be talking about the Cochrane crowd. We collaborated with Cochrane crowd for screening of title and abstracts, and regarding the systematic searching, I've put it in the phrase because sometimes this word systematic searching itself hides so many aspects that are important to know about. So I'll be spending some time taking you through these two particular aspects. And lastly, I will take you through some of the brief analysis because of the lack of the time, I won't be spending much time on analysis. And also, I will again reiterate the importance of evidence and gap map in being useful of guiding what areas can we take up for conducting systematic reviews, and also how evidence and gap maps can be used for producing toolkits. In this case, this toolkit was called intervention tool. So I'll be talking about this in a while. So this map, the homelessness effectiveness map, was commissioned to us by the Center for Homelessness Impact UK. So they commissioned actually two different maps, one for effectiveness, another one for implementation. And the two maps, they cater to two different questions. The effectiveness map is concerned about the effectiveness, that is what works. So we are actually taking all the study designs that are that give us a quantitative assessment of what interventions are effective. And the implementation map particularly takes into account this the barriers and facilitators that that might be that might be useful in determining why things work or why things don't work. So we are currently working on the fourth edition of the map. So we've been working on this map since 2018. So the work on this map is ongoing. So many people have been actively involved in this map, including the chair, Horton White, our director, Ashrita Saran, my colleague, Ashwani Varma, Verma, Shweta Singh, Yashika Murli, and John Ayers has played an important role as an information specialist. And recently, for this particular update of the map, we collaborated with Cochrane Crowd for screening a title abstract. And Anna Noel-Store and her team at Cochrane, they've been wonderful partners. And it would be not correct if I don't acknowledge the contribution of all the volunteers who have helped us in screening those title and abstracts while we use the Cochrane Crowd. So I'll be coming to some of the statistics in the forthcoming slides. And sometimes we often get questions like what kind of software we are using. So we use API Reviewer 4 and API Reviewer web version, depending upon the who is comfortable using what. So we are using basically API Reviewer 4 for the project management, and we use API Mapper for generating the map. And I will, like previous presentations, I will thank my API support team members for being such a support all the time. So just a quick snapshot of the homelessness effectiveness map, and I'm pretty sure you've had a good look at the evidence and gap maps. I'm talking to the audiences or our attendees that by now they should be pretty much aware of what an evidence and gap map looks like. So we have interventions and outcomes arranged across the rows and columns, and these are the bubbles which are color coded, and they indicate our confidence in the findings of the studies included. And the size of the bubble actually suggests us what is the quantum of the evidence in that particular area. By that I mean, the bigger the bubble, that means the more evidence is there in that area. And just I will briefly inform you that we use two different tools for assessing the confidence in findings of impact evaluations and systematic reviews. So for the impact evaluations, we use a in-house developed tool, which was developed by Horton White and Kara Keenan. So we use that for impact evaluations, and for systematic reviews, we use the AmStar tool. And if you want to know more about it, you can put it in the chat. I can spend some time later onto this. So coming to the main part of the presentation, that is utility of evidence and gap maps and how they are a live evidence synthesis tool, and how they sort of give us an opportunity to mend the things or things that we couldn't think of earlier, and there's always an opportunity in every update of the map. So coming to the systematic searching of the grey literature, there are 4 components to this part. Like, we used the intervention specific searches, we did conduct systematic searches of websites, and we have conducted hand searches of journals, and also the citation tracking. Now, coming to the intervention-specific search terms, it would be useful to share with you all that why there was a need of using intervention-specific search terms. So usually, as you might be knowing, that the scope of an evidence and gap map is much larger than the systematic reviews. So we used to use some generic search terms, which would be broader search terms. For example, we would be using a broad intervention category rather than the subparts of it. But this time we thought it would be useful to use more specific search terms, subcategories of the intervention search terms, so that we can get more results pertaining to those kind of studies. And for that, we can't do it on our own. We need the support of somebody who is well versed with the field, who knows various synonyms. Of course, if you've been working over a period of time, if you work for 3 updates of the map, you get to know. But of course, a subject specialist can play a wonderful role there, and our commissioners of the map, the members from the Center for Homelessness Impact, they have been wonderful support there, as they helped us identifying various synonyms of the intervention terms. So what we did was that we used Google and Google Scholar as the starting point to search these intervention terms, and we created search strings, combining them with the study design and population search terms. We largely use Boolean operators and or, and I will be sharing what kind of search strings we made in the coming slides. So we used Google and Google Scholar from India and Germany. So as some of you might be aware, that the location of the searches also has an impact on what kind of results we are getting, and to so that we don't, because each user profile gets a customized results. So we tried using incognito mode, private window mode for every search that we did in the search engine. And search dates and search engine page numbers, they were noted meticulously. And all the records that we retrieved, as I will be showing you in the Prisma diagram, that we retrieved close to 600 studies searching this grey literature. Of course, many of them were duplicates. They were already covered in the previous updates, or they were yet to be coded, retrieved by the database searches and machine learning. So we recovered very good number of studies. But then we had another challenge came up, that we had to identify which studies were already there, whether they were yet to be coded and all that. And for that, we came up with some codes that could guide us, like which studies actually need to be uploaded to the API reviewer. And we just came with basic codes for our own convenience and our own reference and transparency. So I'll be just sharing a snapshot of that also with you. So this is an example of a search string. So for example, here you see we have I will just try to make it a little bigger. Yes. For example, this is the search design. So we did conduct it for both the maps at the same time, and we thought that we will separate them out once we get the results. And so this was done for both effectiveness and implementation maps. We added the population, and we also use the AND operator for various various synonyms of the search terms. For example, family mediation, conciliation, family-based therapy, and likewise for every sub-intervention category, we did this. So you can imagine this was such an exhaustive exercise. So this is just a visual depiction of one of the intervention category, landlord, teen, and mediation. So this is just a snapshot of the process. So just to illustrate the process. So these were the search terms. So we had a search engine, which was Google India. We searched this on so-and-so date, and we noted the page numbers here. And these were the codes that I was talking of. So this was for effectiveness, implementation, and likewise author, title, URL. So I mean, the point of sharing this is that because people sometimes don't know how to do it. So just to give you an idea that this is how you can do it. So next we did the systematic searches of websites. So whatever results we retrieved from the earlier searches, we like simultaneously identified some of the websites that were coming up in the results. For example, there's family and community services from Australia, and similarly several other websites like Crisis from UK and certain others from various countries or regions. So we recorded the domain names, and then these organizations and institutions they were located, and then we did the screening and searches of websites using the snowballing method. And this is how we reported in the results, but we followed the same method for even these results that I showed you in the previous spreadsheet. So then we did the hand searches of journals and some citation tracking as well. So these journals that I've shown here are just for the representation purposes. Of course, these are included, but in addition to that, these journals, we had some other journals as well. So we did online searching of all these issues from the past 5 years of the identified journals. In addition to that, we did the citation tracking of selected records to identify eligible studies. So now I'm just shifting my attention and yours to the to the collaboration of the Cochrane crowd. So this is a tweet highlighting how Cochrane Center for Homelessness Impact and Campbell Reviews collaborated to identify some more new studies for this map. And this is just a visual representation of this African proverb, I am because we are. I'm sure some of you might have heard of it already. And there's also a web browser called Ubuntu. So basically the message is that collaboration is the key. So this is just a snapshot of the Cochrane crowd. So at any point in time, Cochrane might be having some, exercises already running for global screening, and they call it global screening challenges. Even, for example, like 3 days or 4 days back when I took this snapshot, so they had another upcoming task coming for the crowd screening. So I will briefly touch upon the process, like what exactly was involved, how did we got those titles and abstracts screened using the crowd feature, engaging citizens or engaging common people or volunteers. So we first made a training module, which was brief yet exhaustive, covering all the aspects of interventions, outcomes, population and study design. That is the PIOS framework that we've used for this particular map. So we used the training module, and it was mandatory for the screeners, for the potential screeners, to go through the module and then practice it with a practice exercise that we'd made for this particular task. And they had to score 75% to be eligible to screen and access the task that was available. And the training module was revised in consultation with CHI team. So we had 3,141 records identified through database searches and machine learning. So they were screened by the 42 researchers from 15 different countries. So these statistics I've taken from one of the tweets from the CHI, though Cochrane had shared with us also the details of these numbers, but I've just taken it from this source. So, and also to encourage participation, there is a particular number that the screeners might attempt to get acknowledgement in the report. And if they, I think there is also provision of the certificates for the volunteers. And you can imagine, so 3,141 records were screened in mere 7 days, in just a week. And if you can imagine the kind of labor or, the kind of resources that we require for if we were to do it like on our own. So it sort of, saves us time and of course, resources as well. So 12,788 individual classifications were made. So this is actually regarding the process that goes into the Cochrane crowd screening, and they use agreement algorithm. So every single record gets screened 4 times. So that is how they had 12,788 individual classifications. We can spend more time if time permits on this particular issue, if someone is interested in knowing more about it. And there is a paper also by Anna Nolstor. You can also refer to that. It's given in the references at the end of the slides. So coming to the brief overview of the findings and outputs. So first I'll start with the PRISMA. So we had in the previous update about 394 studies. For this update, we identified an additional 163 studies, making it 557 studies. We had 3,143 studies, which were screened by the Cochrane crowd. And owing to the reports that couldn't be retrieved, we could screen 301 studies for the full text screening. And finally, we identified these 163 studies. So now taking you through like how many results or how many studies we have retrieved over the years. So where the very first edition of the map had 221 studies, the next edition had 260 studies. So the total remains 557. So these are the total number of studies during each update. 394 were retrieved during 2020 update and 557 during the 2021, that is current update. So you can see that from 2021 to 557, we have recovered a total of 336 additional studies since the first edition. So that is why I say it's a live synthesis tool. It can be kept updated. So now if we see the study design, we see that about like 87% of the studies were impact evaluations and 13% were systematic reviews. So generally, this could not be the case in other study areas or fields of studies, because sometimes we see that there are higher number of systematic reviews than impact evaluations. But this particular map sort of shows us that there is a feasibility of conducting impact evaluations in this field. And as I mentioned earlier, the tools or the checklist that we use for assessing the confidence in findings, much of the evidence is assessed to be of low confidence, because homelessness as an area, I mean, it's difficult to trace people. So due to the population involved in the process, we have high attrition. So and that affects the ranking or the scaling of the confidence in the findings in impact evaluations particularly. And for systematic reviews, we had mostly that studies, either they couldn't report the excluded studies, or that the meta-analysis wasn't done due to the heterogeneity in the study, so they were mostly low confidence. And as regards the intervention categories and geographies, so the evidence is unevenly spread across intervention categories and geographies. Most of the evidence, about 80 to 85% evidence, comes from the North American region itself, including US and Canada. So when I talk about uneven spread of intervention categories, that I will be showing in one of the slides. In this slide, you see that certain areas of evidence, for example, health, the health as an outcome, and services and outreach, the health and social care, and the accommodation and accommodation-based services, these had a higher number of studies compared to certain areas where the outcomes would be public attitudes and engagement, or housing stability for certain interventions like communications and financing. So this table clearly shows that there are certain areas where there is like good body of evidence, and there are areas where there is like very less or negligible body of evidence. So now I'll be quickly talking about the outputs of the map. So every map is accompanied by a report. So fourth edition will soon be available on the CHI website. And depending on this aggregate evidence and gap map, you can see that these areas had a rich body of evidence, rich in terms of the number of studies I'm talking. So these three systematic reviews were commissioned to the Campbell UK and Ireland team. So one of them is already published, and you can access it to Campbell Systematic Reviews. It's published in Campbell Systematic Reviews, and you can access it to Campbell Library. The other two systematic reviews, they are under the review process, but preprints are available at the CHI website. And then there is a toolkit named Intervention Tool. Now I'll spend a bit time upon discussing what an intervention tool and how evidence and gap map are important, an important stage in evidence architecture to come up with tools that can be very useful for the commissioners and decision makers who have often very less time going through the entire studies. So this intervention...
Two minutes, please, Sabina. Yeah.
Sure, please. Thanks. So we had we did come up with this intervention tool, which had three columns basically indicating the strength of evidence, whether the intervention was cost effective, and what impact it made. So these symbols, you see the two pluses and plus minus. So all these are just codes, and I will be showing the next slide how it is done. So, for example, this access to health services. So this was, there is like considerable strength of evidence, like there's a good body of evidence there, and it's quite impactful, but we didn't have cost effectiveness studies here. And similarly, this toolkit is accompanied by brief description in terms of what actually is the intervention, what was the goal, what does the evidence tell us. Sorry for that. and where does the evidence come out from. So these kind of reports accompany these intervention tools so that it is readable for the people who don't have much time at hand, and then they can make decision regarding commissioning more primary studies or commissioning more systematic reviews. So that brings me to the end of this presentation. So these are some of the references I think will be useful for you all. And
Okay.
I might share this later. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Sabina. Yes, and there's the intervention tool can be found online, and the previous editions of the map can be found online, and the new editions will be coming out very shortly in November. Okay, thank you very much. It's been a very useful and interesting presentation, and I think people should be interested in knowing more about the Cochrane Crowd experience. So please keep those questions coming in the chat. They actually aren't any yet, so have someone can start us off. And now we're going to hear from Ashwani. Ashwani, we're running a bit late, but we can go a little bit. We've got 15 minutes extra time before the next session. So don't feel too rushed, but 15 minutes would be good if you can. Okay, Ashwani on access to justice. Off you go.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Howard, for this. So, hello, everyone. I am Ashwani Varma, and I am an evidence synthesis specialist at Campbell South Asia. And today I'm going to present the Access to Justice map for the poor and disadvantaged in low and middle income countries. So, which is an evidence and gap map which we have finished recently in Campbell South Asia. So, first of all, I would like to start with the acknowledgement for all the team members, including Angela, Ashrita, Jill, Roland, Benjamin, Ella, Louisa, and Dr. Howard White as well. So these are the team members. And I would also like to thank John Ayers, who is information specialist and very actively involved in providing the search strategies and working on that. And also, I would also like to thank UK Department for International Development, DFID, which is under the support for the SADL for this particular map, which is the Center for Excellence for Development, Impact and Learning. So this is the structure of my presentation. So I'll be discussing about this EGM in these steps. So what is this access to justice? Because there is a whole concept of this map. So World Bank 2011 report shows that there is a conflict, security and development which devotes a section of the justice, and the word justice appears nearly more than 570 times throughout that particular report. So even SDG 16, if you see, which tells us about to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. So this highlights the need of this particular map, which highlights which all interventions are available in low and middle income countries, and how they are going to what they are measuring it, what are the outcomes for that particular interventions. So that highlights the need of this particular map. So what is access to justice? So access to justice is defined as the ability to both victims and accused to seek and obtain redress through the formal or informal legal system in an accessible, affordable, timely, and just manner, regardless of any sex, age, socioeconomic status, mental or physical capacity, and or ethnicity. So this is a definition which is given by the World Bank 2020 or 2011 in the 2011 report. So what is the objective of this map? So we would like to develop a clear taxonomy of the interventions and outcome which is related to the access to justice in low and middle income countries. And it provides, and this map specifically includes the primary evaluations and the systematic reviews of the intervention, which intended to increase the justice level interventions for poor and disadvantaged in LMICs. And we also would like to provide the database entries for the included studies, whichever studies which is included in this map, which summarize the intervention, the context, the study design, and what are their findings as well. And like findings, if I can say, I would like to add more in terms of the outcomes they measures that particular studies or maybe impact evaluation. So we are interested in know the outcomes which these study measures, and we also would like to map the available systematic reviews and the primary studies of the impact evaluations and even the process evaluation, because we are also interested to know the process evaluations for these interventions as well. So this is how this map looks like when we developed this map. So if you can see on the left side, we have our interventions. So these are the particular interventions which we have included in this particular map, and in the row section and in the columns, you can see these are the outcomes, so which is like safety, security and well-being, and the public confidence, corruption and harassment. So these are the outcomes, and you can see the bubbles here. So bubble signifies the size of the bubble signifies the amount of evidence which is available. So the red shows the low confidence studies, blue shows the medium confidence studies, and the green shows the high level or high confidence studies. Yes. So what is the approach and the methodology we used? So we have a classification system here. So we have classified our studies of we have used the different filters. So first filter which we use is about the population subgroup. So the first population is about those affected by the conflict, or maybe the conflict and post-conflict settings as well. We have a migrants, we have a ethnic minority groups, the women, children, and the youth and people with disabilities, the medium and small enterprises, and even the general population. So general population is like they have the disadvantaged group, or maybe the population is not stabilized. So we have categorized that as a general population. And then we have a region. So we have defined our region as the World Bank, based on the World Bank categories. So World Bank defines the region as the East Asia and Pacific, Europe and Central, Latin America and Caribbean, Middle East and North Africa, North America, South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. So as I said, we have this, we have included only, we have, this map is particular based on the low and middle income countries. So which includes the upper middle income countries, higher middle income countries. So only the lower and middle income countries were included in this particular map. So the next is the study design. As I told you initially, that we have included all the impact evaluation, the process evaluations, as well as the systematic reviews. So you can see here we included the RCTs, natural experiments, regression discontinuity, the propensity score matching, difference in difference techniques, instrumental variables, and other matching designs, before versus after, systematic review, meta-analysis, and even we have included the qualitative size for this particular map for the process evaluation studies. So we have done the additional task as well, in this map. So because there's no existing strategy specifically in the justice sector which is readily available, particularly in the lower and middle income countries, and even no data, no framework which is available for this. So what we have done for that particular map is we have reviewed the project documents for the Access to Justice project. So we have reviewed mainly the websites and the publications from 3 agencies, which is the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. We have reviewed the project documents from the Department for International Development, and as well as we have reviewed the World Bank documents for making this framework, or to review this project documents from this particular framework or strategy in the justice sector. So this is the conceptual framework which we developed based on the documents which we reviewed, and which is based on the even mid-level theory approach. So you can see on the very left side we have an input. So inputs are like, these are the intervention which is mainly based on. Then we have immediate outcomes, we have the long-term outcomes, and we have the impact. So our main impact of this intervention is to improve the access to justice to these intervention group. So but in between we have certain outcomes. So certain outcomes means that the capacity building of the officials, we have a legal assistance to the individuals, we have a legal framework, whether we have increase the awareness, and we have a timeliness and affordability of the justice which ultimately leads to these longer term outcomes. And these can be measured, in terms of the safety, security, and well-being, the public confidence in the system. And we have access to legal mechanism, which includes a court. We have the traditional bodies, and which has and further it leads to the outcome related to the corruption or the harassment, and even the awareness of the legal right, which ultimately lead to improved access to justice outcome, and it can be measured as an impact of these interventions. So what all intervention categories we have included in this particular map? So one is about the legal protection. We have a justice and security institutions level interventions. We have a known court education. We have a sentencing and prison system, support to the legal aid and counsel, and we have a support to civil society and increasing legal awareness. And I'll be discussing more about in the coming slides about the subcategories of these particular interventions. Then we have something called outcome categories, and outcomes were measured in terms of safety, security, and the well-being. And these are the subcategories which we have taken as an outcome. And we have a public confidence in the system and just institutions of justice. We have a legal rights. We have a corruption and harassment level outcomes, and then we have the access to legal mechanism, courts, and traditional bodies. So as you can see, there are so many outcomes which we have, in these we so many sub outcome categories we have in every outcome category. So I'll be discussing more about again in the future in the coming slide. So search strategy. So what we have done here, so we have searched the academic and specialist criminology related databases, which are 8 in number. We have searched 7 regional databases as well, and we have done the majority of the grey literature search, which includes which is 16 and includes very reputed organization, UN organization, the World Bank bodies as well. So it includes everything we have included to get the maximum outcome in this grey literature search as well. So the findings, what are the findings of this particular map? So out of search or after searching for each database, we got nearly 60,000 studies, and we have screened all 60,000 studies for title and abstract. And out of that, we got 210 studies included for full text screening, and we have screened all 210 studies based on the full text screening. After this, we have included 113 studies for the next phase, that is the coding phase. So we have coded near 113 studies, and out of 113 studies, we got 1 systematic review, 25 impact evaluation, and 87 process evaluation. So which shows that more than nearly 1/4 of, or approximately 1/4 of the included studies are process evaluation in this particular map. So the region wise, if I want to say, nearly half of the studies are from the South Asia and the sub-Saharan Africa, which again based on the World Bank categories or World Bank categorization. And very few studies you can see from the Central Asia, only 1. We have a Caribbean studies. We have 7 studies for Caribbean and Latin America, and we have 9 studies from the Middle East and the North Africa, and only the 1/10 of the studies are from the East Asia and the Pacific region. So this chart will tell you about what are the study designs, which is mainly included, as I said, 87 studies for the process evaluation, which is the highest in the number. But if you look at the particular study design, there are only 3 RCTs, which is a part of the impact evaluation, only 3 before and after studies, and 1 studies each for the natural experiment, 1 regression discontinuity, and only 1 systematic reviews. And other matching design includes more kind of quasi experimental study design as well. So we have a 13 in that sense. And then the population categories, as I mentioned you, there are different categories. So maximum studies which are conducted are on women and children, and which is 59. And then the disadvantaged groups, we have 37 studies, and we have 26 minorities studies which are focused on minority groups, and 18 studies for those or those affected by the conflict or the post-conflict settings. But the main issue is there are only 2 studies each for the migrants and small and middle enterprises, and only 9 studies for the people with disabilities. So the region which I showed you previously, you can see very limited studies on the Central Asia, and the majority is from the South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. So the evidence which is available on which category? So 45 studies are for the legal protection, which shares the maximum share, which is followed by the Justice and Security Institution, which is the 30th study. But only 1 study is available for the sentencing and prison system, which is the lowest, which is followed by the non-court education, is about 6 studies. So these are the intervention categories. But if I speak about more on the subcategories, so you can see the majority of the studies which is based on the legal framework and the legal reforms in the system. And even we have something called police related subcategories intervention, which includes the training of the police professionals, and the police and the intervention which is based on the police professionals are the highest. And again, next is the court procedures. We can see the intervention which leads to the third place. But if you see, there are only single interventions which is related to the prison conditions, case coordination activities, any informal justice related activity, case backload, or the diversion program. So we can see a large number of a variation even in the subcategories of these interventions. Now, what is the evidence by outcome shows us? So you can see majority of the process outcomes, which includes the different categories as well. But we have access to justice, access to legal mechanisms, which is the highest. The legal rights, we have a lowest in terms of the corruption and harassment, which is 1, and which is followed by the safety, security, and the well-being, and the public confidence in system and institution of justice. Now, these are the outcome categories. So the process evaluation leads, it has the maximum subcategories which discuss more about it is the implementation issues, which falls under the process outcomes. So nearly 51 studies are discussed about the implementation issues. And then there are some personal perspectives. So these personal perspectives are in terms of get interviewed with the court officials, the police professionals, or the practitioners, or the researchers, which are mainly related to the justice sector population. So these are these people. And then accessibility of the judicial system is the next highest observed outcome in the included studies, which is followed by efficiency of the judicial system, and then again awareness of the right, the design perspective. So overall, you can see the majority of the process, as we have a majority of the process evaluation in these included studies, and majority of the process outcomes are very common in our map as well.
Ashwani, 2 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Howard. So so study confidence, this is the overall study confidence, but I would like to talk more about the individual study confidence. So majority of the impact evaluation are of low confidence, and only 1 and 2 relates to high and medium confidence studies. And same thing will be followed for the process evaluation as well. So majority 73 are the lower confidence studies, whereas 5 and 9 are high, medium, and high confidence studies. So this is about the domain-specific critical appraisal. So majority of the overall ranking is about the outcomes and the sample size and overall is low confidence studies. And again, same thing can be seen even in the process evaluation section as well, where the sampling is not properly described or the data analysis is not described in the included studies. So where are the evidence gaps? So evidence gap is in terms of interventions are the support to legal aid, maybe the sentencing and prison system, and the non-court education. And the gap is very much visible in terms of these outcomes, which is the infrastructure-related outcome, accessibility of the court decision, corruption, and independent judiciary. Migrants, people with disabilities, and the MSMEs are not described in the population groups, and we lacked the studies in terms of quantitative evaluation and systematic reviews. So our conclusion is about the lack of reviews and the methodological shortcomings. Effort needed so that the key funders and the research and justice sector reach the consensus to identify the priority areas for the research work. And the interventions which we discussed just now is like they are lacking. These interventions are particularly which is lacking. So the geographical base, if you see, majority of studies are from South Asia, and the applicability of this map is in South Asian countries, which are these countries, and even impact evaluations are lacking in each country region. So these are the challenges which we faced are very few evaluations and reviews as evident in the outcomes, and the majority of included evaluations are low confidence evaluations, and there is lacking of evidence in all regions. So what are the next steps here? So we can use this map to identify and prioritize the systematic review and the primary studies. This map will help in building the rigorous evaluation into national programs. High confidence evaluations are required for better decision making, and evidence other than the Asian African continents are required. And these interventions based intervention these are the intervention which is required to generate more evidence in the in justice sector interventions. So that's all from my side. Thank you all. Thanks a lot for everyone for your time.
Okay, thank you, Ashwani. There's been some discussion going on in the chat. Let me just pick up the last question from Fiona, since we haven't got much time left. So Ashwani mentioned at the beginning that in determining the framework for this map, we couldn't find any suitable strategies. So we looked at project documents. We looked at project documents from the main funders who work in this area, who are DFID, as it then was, FTO now, UNDP in particular, and the World Bank. Actually, USAID also has quite a number of access justice projects. And so the process evaluations come primarily from those agencies. And so they're funding, their process evaluations of projects they're funding. So they're not funded as discrete research projects. They undertake the evaluations of the ongoing interventions that they're supporting. And then it's bits and pieces. So there's an NGO called International Rescue Committee, IRC, that's quite active in this area and funds rigorous impact evaluations, usually funded by the British government. And so there's a number of IRC impact evaluations there, particularly a guy called McCartan Humphreys works on those. There's a group called EGAP, Evidence Experiments for Governance and Politics. There are a number of EGAP studies in there, and that's a research network actually based in Germany, Germany and the US, that McCartan set up originally when he was in the US. But it's a fairly broad network. So a number of studies have come from EGAP, and they are more research oriented. So EGAP was supported by, again, FCDO, but they stopped support recently, and one other donor, I think Hewlett. So they're more research oriented, but these are intervention studies. So they're not separate research projects, discrete from the interventions. They're normally, the research funding normally comes linked to the intervention. There are some exceptions, like 3IE funded some of McCartan's work, and another one in Sierra Leone that is done by JPOW. So some are funded for research funds, but mostly not. And actually, FCDO has a large governance program now, funded by, independent from EGAP, funded by, managed by IPA, been going on for about 4 or 5 years now. So that's governance generally, not justice. So there are some major agencies internationally. And the other one's Open Science Foundation, Open Society Foundation, what's his name's George Soros's group. And so Open Society is very interested in this area. We've not managed to engage with them. I tried. There's actually a couple of Access to Justice events. We attended to talk about the map in the margins. We weren't invited to present. We've not managed to engage with them. As Ashwani said, we just completed the map, so we're going to try and engage with funders once the map is actually published, and try and do that using FCDO's leverage. We don't have convening power in this space, obviously, but FCDO has some, and they're interested in the map. Obviously, they commissioned it, and so we will hopefully get some leverage with some of the key funders in the area through that work. Okay, I do need to wrap up. Thank everyone for attending. Thank you, Ashwani. Good presentation. I'm very happy to see this, and all excellent presentations. I'm very pleased with them. And if you want to hear more excellent presentations, we have in 3 minutes the next session starting from a set of studies staff in Campbell South Asia have been doing for the Youth Endowment Fund in the UK. So these are all interventions to support to prevent youth offending, and it's normally an early years preventive approach. So we're looking at sports interventions, which we have a draft final review, and that's being presented primarily. There will be presentations from YEF itself, hopefully. I'm going to go online now and check that there, and then also wilderness therapy and mentoring programs. So do leave a session and go to, I forget the number, but it's going to be 19 point something, probably 19,1. Don't come my way, I will tell you. Get on my hopping app. 19.1. So leave here, please, and go straight to panel session 19.1. I'll see you all there. Thank everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.